Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Spring. As you know, I'm blessed to chat with exceptional people, and today is no exception. Today's guest is an amazing life coach, Joe Figliano, who has cured himself of a chronic disease which doctors told him was incurable. And since 2015, he has made it his mission to help people on their journey to shift their lives into being the highest version of themselves. Joe has facilitated workshops and presentations for high schools, universities, wellness hubs, and much more. One great hub got in the United States, and he has also been featured in many magazines, such as Living Now, which is so relevant for today because we have to live in the present moment, and Crohn's and Colitis Australia, after having Crohn's disease for 10 years and has now been symptom-free since 2008. And Joe is also the founder of Lovefest, which I happened to stumble upon recently. I joined one of his online events, which was absolutely amazing. I think it was for the full moon last month, and he had so many different speakers there, entertainment, and unfortunately I wasn't able to go to the dance party in the night, which I believe was a lot of fun. So welcome, Joe, to Wellness Spring.
Thank you, Beverly. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here talking to you.
Thank you. Would you like to tell the listeners what led you to be this amazing healer you are today? Because you did have quite a difficult journey, and maybe you can let us know your background, because you weren't always in the field of healing.
Yeah, that's right. So I was born in Fairfield in Western Sydney, at Fairfield Hospital. I went to Fairfield High School and I lived there until in my 20s. And I came out of school, and, you know, IT was actually my worst subject in high school, but then I decided to do IT and open up a computer shop, become a software developer first.
Oh my God. And, I didn't realize when we chatted the other day that you didn't like IT. So that seems a bit bizarre that you chose that as your profession.
Yeah. I didn't do too well at it, but I didn't know what else to do after school. And I thought, oh, you know, well, what am I going to do with myself? And I thought, well, IT is the future, so I might as well study that some more. And then I became a software developer, which I didn't like. But, and I didn't really like IT much, but I liked business. So I decided to start my own business at the age of 23.
Wow.
Yep. And I suppose I first started developing symptoms of Crohn's as a software developer when I first started, you know, thinking about my life and wanting to get serious about my life and wanting to save money and have a home and have investments and build my life up with wealth, you know, and security. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself, and, you know, to create that. And I worked pretty hard for it, you know, from software developer into having my own business as well. Yeah.
Fantastic, because you were pretty gutsy to start a business at 23, especially with things that you didn't really like, what you weren't passionate about. But I guess you, from what I understand, you were driven by owning your own house. And I know from talking to you before, you had the big dream to get your house and nice car and boat, and you ticked all those boxes. So how old were you when you started getting the symptoms?
Well, yeah, so the first symptoms came at about 23. So So I actually started as a software developer at about 22. So at about 23 is when the symptoms first started coming, and I went to it was something minor actually, but it was weird. I had some discharge, and I went to a specialist, and I had some tests done. And I remember when I walked in to the room to get the results, the doctor had a very serious look on his face, like something big is happening to me. And he said,
"Oh my goodness!" Can I just ask you, in that moment, how did you feel? Because I've been down a similar pathway, and I'm just curious how you felt. Just seeing the look on the doctor's face and thinking, "Oh my God."
Yeah, well, I felt a lot of fear. I was very afraid.
Yeah.
Because at that time I really trusted, doctors and everything, and I felt extremely afraid of what this would mean to me. And when he said it, you have Crohn's disease, I was like, I had no idea what that is. Like, what is that? Like, it must be something pretty bad. And so then I asked, and he went on to explain it, where it's a condition. It's a chronic autoimmune disease that affects the bowel and the digestive system, and it's something that you can go through a lot of suffering for many years, and you need different types of medication, and it's something that apparently is non-curable. And I remember walking away from that, and I was like, I felt so lost, and it was really eerie and strange, and it's like my life had just changed all of a sudden because of that.
Yeah, it's very like you were only 23 as well, and was your mom or anybody with you at the time when you went there?
Yeah, no, I was on my own, but then I went and I did tell my mother what was happening, and she was in a lot of fear as well. Like, she's asking me telling me that I need to be really careful. I need to be careful what I eat and listen to what they're saying, what's next. So they are, I was prescribed some medication, and and it was a bit of a shock to her as well.
Yeah. And did anybody else in your family have similar diseases, or were you the first?
Yeah, I did have someone else in my family that had something similar. Yeah, so I wasn't the first. And I then went and asked this person, for more information and their experience, and that person's experience was, pretty troubled as well, for a period of time. So
yeah.
So I then had,
So you started off with minor symptoms, and you would have probably heard from the doctors what symptoms to expect, or you might have Googled it, being in IT, because I come from a nursing background. I think sometimes the internet can be bad because you read about all the signs and symptoms, and stuff that we read is not always necessarily true, and we think about the worst. And so over the years, you started off with mild symptoms, and then you were taking medication. Did you get any side effects from the medication? And what other symptoms did you get?
Yeah, so what happened is, over the years, all the symptoms that I was told from the doctor and from others actually came true. It actually, so my symptoms became worse and worse and worse, and the medication made things worse. So, I had, blood in the stool. I was going to the bathroom like 10 times a day. I had cramps, I had pain, I had drowsiness from the medication, I had itchiness, I had mood swings, I couldn't sleep at night, and the list goes on and on. It was always something that was a problem for me, and I was in this constant state of dealing with these problems on a daily basis. Kind of, there was a lot of feeling down about myself, and why me? And it just got worse over time. Like, it fluctuated. There were times when it was okay, but it just, you know, the journey kind of got worse and harder as I went. You know, I did work long hours as well.
Yeah.
And there were times when I just struggled to work because of it. And yeah, and I remember it reached a point where I wanted to, I had a daughter that was 3 years old. This is after having it for the disease for a few years. You know, I just wanted to lay down with her. I had to lay down to read her the alphabet, because I didn't have the energy to run around and jump around with her. I wanted to play with her and run and, you know, be like a child with her, but I felt like I wasn't able to do that. And, you know, my child remembers until this day that, you know, that's what I used to do as she, you know, when she was a child, young, you know.
Wow. Wow. And how did you cope through it? Because I know you, with mood swings, that must have been hard to deal. One, I didn't realize you were married so young and had your daughter. You know, so you had a lot of things on your plate, you know. And do you think there was any correlance between starting the business, because the symptoms seemed to start around that time? You know, were you putting lots of mental pressure on yourself and your thoughts? And
the symptoms started before I started the business. The symptoms actually started when I started to put pressure on myself in some form. Okay. You know, for me, you know, when there was extra stress on my body, you know, that's when they actually began. There was extra stress on me mentally as well that I was placing on myself. But, you know, I went through this journey where, you know, I was working and I was saving money, and like you said, you know, I did get to have the house that I wanted, and an investment, and the boat and the car and the motorbike, and, you know, all these fancy things, and, you know, which was cool. But, you know, I was working for money, and I was working for things, you know, and at the same time, I didn't have my health, you know. And I reached a point where, you know, I'm like, you know, I can't do this anymore. You know, I just, you know, I tried a diet, changing my diet, and that helped a little, but, you know, the problem continued.
Can you tell us what type of diet you were eating at the time? Like, did the doctors put you on a certain type of diet to calm the symptoms? No, nothing.
They didn't put me on a certain type of diet, but they did say, oh, someone has suggested that this diet's worked for them, you know, if you want to give it a try. So I did try that diet. And the diet helped me to a certain point. Like, I wasn't experiencing the health I would have liked to, because flare-ups and triggers would still come with the disease, you know. And then I struggled with the diet. I'm like, because I struggle to stick to things, you know, too much, you know. So I have like this ADHD type personality. And, you know, it didn't end up working for me.
Yeah. I know when we chatted before, you said that you liked a lot of fast food and fried food, and you were drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes as well. Did they tell you to stop all those, or you didn't really get advised?
I didn't get much advice on that. I was told that if I stopped smoking, it would help. Okay. And I did realize, like, by listening to my body, that, you know, drinking less alcohol would help as well. Okay.
So do you think do you think the illness made you more aware of your body, to listen to your body? Because I know people in your situation, I'm the same. When you work long hours and you're so focused on the business, you don't have time to know what's going on in your body, because you're working long hours, you're exhausted, you might not be sleeping properly. So maybe the illness was telling you to slow down a bit.
Exactly, yeah. I did start to learn to, over time, listen to my body a little bit more. And, you know, with the foods as well, like you said, so I did start to eat less fried food, less alcohol, less smoking, and start to slow down a little, with my work. And again, I felt like that did help. Like I did reach a point where I felt a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
But it was still, the flare-ups would still come. So therefore, it wasn't healing the disease.
Yeah.
It was just creating a better condition for myself. Yeah.
Right. And I know when we chatted earlier, you mentioned that your wife had, was it a clot in the brain or tumor in the brain when we chatted before? And did you have the symptoms like, how old was you when your wife had to have the surgery?
Yeah, so that was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would have been 30.
Right.
And yeah, so around that time, my wife at the time had a brain aneurysm.
Right.
And so that means I had Crohn's disease for 7 years at that point.
Wow.
She had a brain aneurysm where a blood vessel burst in her brain, and we had to go to hospital. You know, like she got flown in helicopters, came and took her to the right place to get surgery, because we needed to get to the right specialists, and she was on life support, and we were told that she was either going to die or be permanently disabled. It was likely for that to happen. I had to sign some paperwork, you know, and so then she had this surgery. And you know, we both, I had learnt through that. I had gone through some major changes in who I am through that experience. I learnt. I said to myself, I will do whatever it takes, whatever is possible to help, you know, her to be okay. I will. You know, my daughter at the time was about 1 year old.
Oh.
Just born, and my life with my family was everything, you know, and my work. So it was my business and building up my work and having a good place for my family and building security and my family itself. Like I was doing everything for my family, you know.
Yeah.
And so I then I had this experience. So 3 days after her aneurysm is when she was going into surgery. And that's when I was told that there's a high chance of her dying. I then started pacing up and down my home for about 3 hours. I left my daughter at my mother's place so I could be alone. I'm just walking up and down, and I'm visualizing her being okay.
Wow.
And coming home for New Year's Eve. And I imagined everybody praying that was praying for her, that I knew that was praying. And I imagined that, and like everybody is praying. There are people praying in Italy as well, people praying in different states. And I visualize the prayer and the energy of the prayer kind of coming into one channel. And I put my prayer into that as well. And I just visualized this light of love that was coming down towards her during the surgery, into the surgeon.
Yeah.
The prayers going into the surgeon, into his hands, and then I saw the surgery actually happening to perfection, so she can come home during that day. And then she saw the same thing that I saw at the same time, because she floated up above her body and she saw the surgery the same way that I saw the surgery.
So she had an out-of-body experience while you were doing the prayer and everybody else was doing the prayer?
Yeah, well, I was doing the prayer the night before. Yeah. She had the out-of-body experience during the surgery the day after.
Wow.
And saw the same thing. But the prayer that I saw, the visual that I saw, was during the prayer. So it's like during the surgery. So it's almost like time didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was just all happening at the same time. And the way that I visualized it and what she saw is exactly what happened.
Wow. And did you tell her what you'd done? Did you tell her what you'd done? Yeah. So yeah. Then when she had the surgery, she came out the body and seen that. Wow, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
And then, but she wasn't conscious. So even though she wasn't it took her a couple of weeks before she was actually conscious, because all this time she'd been unconscious.
Oh, was she in an induced coma?
It wasn't an induced coma.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't an induced coma, but she was just unconscious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned she was on life support, yeah. Because often with the brain, they put you in an induced coma because it's so stressful, and to allow the medications to work without people moving their head and things like that. Yeah.
And so what this experience, what it brought, and during this time, I had also learned Reiki from a friend.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah. So I learned about
master.
the power of, So I learned about the power of visualization, the power of law of attraction, the power of Reiki, and I learned how energy works. And I would go and visit her, and what happened is her surgery came through okay, and I would visit her, but she still wasn't conscious. There was a healing process.
Yeah.
And I would visit her every day and I'd do Reiki on her every day, Reiki every day, in the energetic healing. And it's all about love, right?
Yeah. Well, as you know, Reiki is a Japanese word for unconditional love. So it's the universal love. And love is in everything and everyone and the air we breathe. And if you're directing your attention and intention for that love healing, it must have been amazing. Yeah,
exactly. And that's exactly what I learned. I learned about the energy and attention and love and how to direct it. And so she came through perfectly fine, exactly the way that I visualized it during that prayer,
wow,
which was a blessing. It was a huge blessing, and because we had another daughter after that because of it.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful! Congratulations.
Thanks. And so
I was going to ask you about faith, because you talked about faith, and having lived in France and know loads of Italians, they're very strict on their prayers and religion per se. What's your take on faith now that you've prayer?
I was born and raised Roman Catholic as an Italian, but I don't. I don't follow that or any other religion for that matter. I have researched, like I reached a point where I walked away from the Catholic Church because of various situations and ideas that weren't connecting to me. And I researched very many different religions and faiths around the world. A lot of Eastern philosophy and Buddhism and Hinduism, and I visited Hindu temples and Buddhist temples and monasteries as well, and mosques. And so I reached a point where I realized that at the core of every faith and religion and belief, philosophy, whether it's Western or Eastern or Southern, is all the same at the core.
Right.
At the core, it's all the same, and that's all about love.
No, I totally agree. Fantastic. And so, was this the turning point in your life? after your wife was healed, or what would you say was the turning point when you healed yourself of your Crohn's disease?
Well, that was the biggest turning point for me, because I realized that was difficult to explain. It's like I had this experience through the drama and through the hard time.
Yeah.
You know, because at this point of desperation,
yeah,
where I realized that, you know, there is something more to life than I've been taught.
Right.
You know, and I realized that I was living a life that was not really something that I'd chosen from a deeper level. It's something that I had been taught to live this life. I've been taught that if I do these things that I'll be happy, you know.
Right.
Like working hard, making money, having all these wonderful things through, but it wasn't. So I had learned that that's not it. That's not me, you know. And so part of that journey was feeling lost, you know, and being like, okay, well, if that's not me, what is me? And but what is possible, you know? So it's having these, and then reading books like Deepak Chopra, the spiritual laws of 7 spiritual laws of success.
Oh yeah.
Made a difference in my life. And you know, learning about purpose as well.
Mm-hmm.
What, you know, reaching, like when I reached my darkest moment, I'm like, well, what's the point of living? You know, why am I here? What's the point of living?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I asked myself this question as I was experiencing the pain and the suffering through with the Crohn.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Why am I? What? And so by continuously asking, eventually, you know, I start getting some answers. You know, but these answers, it's not like I know that these are the answers for sure. It's just something that's coming to me. You know, and something that came to me was, maybe I'm here to show people that something that they think is not possible is possible. You know, and that included healing, you know.
Yeah.
Healing from the disease, you know. That's something that came into my mind, you know. You know, I reached a point of anger, of feeling so much anger towards the system for not having an answer for me. Right. You know, for not having a cure for me, because I was on 4 different types of medication. I was told I was at high risk of bowel cancer. You know, I was told that I need surgery because I'm high risk of bowel cancer. I need to have surgery to carry a bag to go to the bathroom in.
Right.
And I was told that having this surgery does not mean that I'm cured. It means that, you know, it's just going to relieve my pain for a while, but then come back, you know. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, what's the point? Why am I going to get myself cut up if it's not going to cure me? You know? So that, I remember driving home after being told that by the surgeon. You know, I kind of felt like the surgeon likes doing this. I felt like maybe he likes cutting up people, you know. He gets paid a lot of money for it, you know. And like I just didn't feel right as he was saying this to me, you know. I remember driving home thinking all these things, you know, and what is my life? What have I come to? Like I was still felt like I was quite young, you know. I was about 32 at this time. And then not long after that is when I made a decision. And, you know, a lot of people say to me, well, how can you just make a decision to just be healthy when you're experiencing so much disease? And I suppose for me, it's a combination of different events that have happened and have occurred in my life to have slapped me around a bit, and to get to this point to say, okay, I'm done with that. That's not me anymore. I am now choosing to be healthy, you know, and I'm going to do this, whatever it takes, whatever I need to do, anything that could possibly help me to be healed and be healthy, I will do that.
Fantastic.
And so
what did you do then?
so I started, part of it was listening to my body, you know, and listening to my body was probably one of the biggest things. I started listening to my emotions more, you know. As a child, I was taught that it's not good to cry, you know, like a lot of males have had. You shouldn't cry because that makes you weak, you know, and that's the thoughts that I had, you know.
Yeah.
But I learned through reading that emotional intelligence is an important part of life, you know.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and so I learned to start to listen to my emotions more. What's happening emotionally, and to do that, I needed to stop working so hard, because the hard work was part of my distraction. You know, it's like an addiction almost.
Yeah.
So I can listen to my body. I started eating lunch more, because before I used to skip lunch because I used to just work straight through it, you know, or I'd eat while I'm working. So I started being more mindful of my food. I started being more mindful of my emotions and feeling them in my body. And the biggest emotion was guilt and shame.
Oh.
The two emotions that would come up the most, that were the most difficult to allow myself to experience, you know. And I'm still learning how to do that, you know, it's a journey.
Yeah.
But at the very least, I was able to sit down and just breathe and just ask myself the question, what emotion am I feeling now? What emotions came to my body today? And then I would allow myself to feel those emotions in the body. And usually they were in the belly, which is where all my physical pain was anyway. So I discovered that my emotions were coming from my belly, from my gut. And you know, and what I started to do was to just send love to those areas, like connect to my heart and send love to those areas where the emotions were, you know, and I'd send love to those emotions, you know. And this is why I believe so much in the power of love, and the power of love starts with yourself, you know, self-love, self-care. So I started doing more of that, and more and more and more and more. I asked myself questions of, you know, what are other times in my life where these emotions, and I would visualize and go back into these prior events in my life where, you know, I would have had an experience that was probably quite a negative experience, because I would internalize it and beat myself up over it and tell myself that I'm not good enough, or tell myself, and that would bring up, that's where the guilt and shame was coming from, because of these events of the past. So I'd visualize these events of the past, and I'd look at them from a different lens now. And I started giving those a positive perspective and sending love to myself in those moments, which then would affect my life today. Because it's kind of like shifting my memories. It's like I'm almost changing my memories.
Yeah.
Which then changes, because I've shifted my memories and having a more loving experience with myself over those memories. I'm then having a more loving experience with myself today.
Exactly. I usually say to people, we can't change the past, but we can change the way we look at the events that happened to us in the past. And from there, we can move forward and almost like recreating yourself, as if, you know, if that event didn't happen and something else had happened, how would your life be today? How would you be feeling? And it's wonderful that you're speaking so openly about guilt and shame, because, you know, I grew up when it was like, big girls don't cry, sit in the corner, shh, be seen and not heard, and so forth. And, you know, crying is part of life and our emotions. And I like the way you said you felt it in your tummy, where, you know, the stomach is the root of many emotions, like you'll say butterflies in the tummy, or tied up, my stomach's tied up in knots. And you know, and you've taken it that step further where you're acknowledging it, sending it love and embodying it. And in fact, you're just saying that I love you, that's happened. You know, I say to people, you can bless it, set it free, forget it and move on. And it's wonderful that you, especially as a man, because with John Gray's book, you know, men lives in the caves, the women's usually blather, but men haven't got an emotional outlet to talk to their mates about. So, you know, I hope lots of men benefit, and young boys as well, and girls as well, listening to this talk, because we in schools we get bullied, you know, we get called names, fatty, skinny, four eyes and lanky, you know, and much more. And a lot of time people don't even know what they mean, but when people laugh, you know how you feel, you know, feeling ridiculed. And it's so important to heal the past like you did. And so how did you feel when you eventually healed yourself completely? Or what did the doctors say? Oh my God, you completely healed yourself? Or
Yeah, so just before I answer that question, I just want to share, so just to get a more of a bigger picture, is that the emotions was one part that was really important, probably the most important. But there are other parts that are important, such as mentally, so how I communicate with myself, spiritually, how I look at the world, and my faith. My faith was in love, you know.
Yeah.
And my faith was in my purpose, why I'm here. Even though I didn't have the answer, it was like I'm here for something bigger, you know. And I would just keep telling myself that, because I knew that if I healed, that there would be something bigger for me. It's just part of the process. And then also physically, like I would listen to my body and make sure that I do things in the right manner. I had some advice from my Chinese medicine practitioner around diet. I took some Chinese medicine. I did acupuncture. I did yoga. I did meditation. I sat in the sun more. I practiced gratitude every day. I would wake up and say to myself every day, thank you, God, for my perfect health, even though I didn't have perfect health, even though I was in pain. I would say that and then visualize what it would look like if I did have perfect health. What would I be doing? And one of those things that I would be doing would be running around with my daughter and playing, you know, and feeling so happy and joyful from doing that, instead of being in pain and low energy and etc. So being of high energy. So I just really imagine that and embody that on a daily basis. And I learned about the placebo from Joe Dispenza later on as well. And I learned from Bruce Lipton about how we are able to impact our genes and our cells through our thoughts. And you know, so I started practicing these on a regular basis, even though sometimes it can be quite challenging to do that. And some days it's like I'm not going anywhere near that because I'm just not there. And that's okay. And I would just bring myself back to it again and again. And by doing this, it started impacting me in, you know, my physical body, my mental body, my emotional body, my spiritual body, you know, all of this, and nature, and really, and just appreciating, being grateful for even just a blade of grass and being present with a blade of grass, and then the lines and intricacies of the blade of grass, and stopping and smelling the roses, literally, you know, around my block where I lived, you know. Like I wouldn't go out much to parks and that because I needed to get back to what I was doing, but I would just at least take time to just connect to nature as well. And that was huge for me at the same time. So, you know, I just want to share with everybody out there, you know, can really make an impact in your life, you know. And I reached the point where I started weaning off my medication slowly. You know, about, you know, 6 to 9 months into the process. It took about 6 months. It took about 6 weeks before I could see that I was making a difference. But it took about 6 to 9 months at least before I got to a point good enough to slow down my medication.
That's remarkable.
4 different medications. I started slowing down my medication, and then to the point I got to 0. And then at about 18 months, I felt completely symptom-free, without medication.
Wow.
And it's the first time that for about, and I've been symptom free ever since, and that's been like 13 years now.
Wow.
And what I did after I became symptom free, I slowly started introducing my old foods back.
And how did that react on your
Drinking
body?
occasionally again, alcohol, smoking.
Did you do it to just challenge your body and see?
So, well, there's two reasons. One, I wasn't ready to give up all these things, yet. And two is, I wanted to challenge myself as well. And I'm someone that does take risks. I have a high risk tolerance.
Yeah.
Which is a bit different to some, and I think my ADHD plays a part of that, or my ADHD tendencies. Like, I don't see myself as that, but I see myself as having these types of traits.
Right.
And that is part of who I am. And so I push the limits on that to see. I don't recommend this to anybody though, for research for myself.
Right.
And I realized that that the physical aspect of it is not what healed me, because by introducing these things back, it didn't affect my health whatsoever in a negative way. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's wonderful news for everyone suffering with Crohn's, because over the years, lots of people have come to me, and it's almost like a lot of them will say they feel like they've been given a life sentence, that their life has really gone the way they knew it. And, just a lot of them have been so depressed. And by the time they come to see me, some of them have even been suicidal because, they might have had the operation you talked about and all the sensitivities going around, wearing a colostomy bag and things like that. And, not feeling comfortable in their body and who they are, and not being able to do the things like playing with their daughter and high energy and things like that.
So what happened is, I suppose what I'm saying is that doing the physical stuff like the diet and that is important to create the right conditions to heal, So if you want to go on this journey, if anybody would like to go on this journey, the first thing is to create the optimal conditions to heal, right? Mm-hmm. And that includes the diet and going for walks, making sure there's enough exercise and vitamin D, etc. And stop smoking, stop drinking, don't eat fatty foods, don't, make sure it's so this, get no more fizzy drinks, no less sugar. Like, all of this stuff is important to create the right condition for healing. But then the mental, the emotional, the spiritual is as important, and I would say the most important for me was the emotional. But there is also another thing that's come up, that I've realized. Now, first of all, I want to say that it did take a bit of work, it takes commitment and it takes work, but it's actually mean, for me, it meant that I'm stressing less. There's less stress. I'm relaxing more. I'm enjoying the sun and the birds more. Like, why wouldn't you want to do it, but these 18 months for me have meant, 12 great years of feeling so much more freedom in my life. So I highly recommend this to anyone. It's definitely worth it, It's just changed my life, this experience, my life completely, because I've also learned new skills, and there's no way that I can go back, because it's a life journey, It's a life journey of getting to know myself better. And it's a life journey that every day I've chosen to be a better version. I can to be that. And a big part of that, mentally, spiritually, and once you do that, you're not going back to how you were emotionally before, because you've shifted to more of this type of person. And the other thing that's important that I want to share is the identity shift, because we identify ourselves we put ourselves in a box, and I still do this. We put ourselves in a box and say, this is the person I am, and this is my identity, and my identity was, I'm Joe disease. And I had to get myself out of that before I experienced the healing, and getting myself out of that identity was saying, I'm Joe and I'm healthy. And I can say, I'm Joe, I'm healthy because I can walk. Thank you, God, for my perfect health because I can walk. Thank you, God, for my perfect health because I can talk. Thank you, God, for my perfect health because I can make myself a sandwich. Thank you, God, for my perfect health so I can go outside and feel the sun on my face and see the sun. Thank you, God. So it's that feeling. How does that feel? When you were to say that and embody that inside your body, how does that feel? And like really embody that and really shift. And then what that does is that helps to shift the identity away from the identity of disease to a new identity of health. And that is something that is huge, is massive. And I've come across a few other people that have done this, including someone that has had surgery with a colostomy bag, that has been able to shift themselves into a life of health, and cured. And it's not just health, it's joy, it's the feeling of abundance, it's attracting more into life of what you want to experience, and because they have gone through these shifts themselves as well. They have gone through similar shifts as well. And I've met people because since that point, I've tried to help others, but also I've been wanting to communicate and connect with other people that have done something similar, because I didn't know anybody else that had done this. And then slowly I've been connecting with someone else, and then someone else again, and then someone else again, and then someone else again. So it is rare and it is a small percentage, but there are quite a few of us out there now.
Yeah.
And
have you built like a website or forum for people with Crohn's disease that they can contact you on? You can share your story and give them advice?
Well, I did have a website at once called The Power Within when I was coaching. Yeah. I still am coaching, but I'm not promoting that. Like if anybody wants support, then I am still offering that. But it's not something that I'm driving forward to, because I've shifted. I'm open to communicating with anybody, and I have my website as well for Lovefest, because I've shifted from this place to my purpose keeps changing, just like my purpose today may not be my purpose in a year's time, it's just who I am today, and so the way so as I was saying, a lot of my faith is around love, right?
Yeah.
And it started with the love for self.
Yeah.
Yeah. The self-love that I was talking to you about. And through the self-love comes, now I can be there and give my fullest attention of love to those that are close to me, to my family, to my children, and to my friends. I could not jump around and play with my daughter until I was able to give myself enough love to get myself, right?
Yeah.
And that has meant the world to my child, right?
That's wonderful.
And so through that, so then it's family, and then it's community. So I then had an experience when I went to Nepal, and I helped Nepal after the earthquakes to rebuild classrooms, We raised some money and built 5 classrooms in a place where it was full of destruction, where there was nobody else going. And it was another one of those things where I was told that I shouldn't do it, you know, and because it's dangerous, etc. But I followed my heart, and I went there because I wanted to help them. But when I came back, I realized that they actually helped me more than I helped them. And they helped me to realize that. I asked my English translator, he said that, you know, what I noticed is that people were happier in the villages after the earthquakes, and there was more destruction in the villages. They were happier there because they had community, they had each other. And so coming back, I'm then like, okay, well, what can I do about that? So now it's important to me to bring community together. And so we're doing that face-to-face, in person, and online, mostly online now because of the situation, you know. Yeah. And then the next phase after that is planet, you know. So it's love for planet is what Lovefest is about, you know. So I am reachable through my website, which is www.australia.com. Anybody can go there and ask a question, and contact me through there, and I'm happy to help with anything related to what I've shared tonight.
Oh, thank you very much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be with you. And as you know, I'm a self-love expert, and I've had my own self-healing journey as well. And for me, everything you resonate, it's like you're speaking my language. And we have so much in common on our journey. And I believe love is the answer. Love is the medicine. Love is the remedy for everything. You know, love is in the air we breathe. Love is all around us. And I now is a wonderful opportunity during lockdown for us all to practice self-love. And if you can't go out for whatever reason, you can have a plant inside. And as you connected with the blade of grass, you can just connect with the leaf on your plant, for example. And, you know, it's nature, the planet and Mother Earth, you know, we're all one. And it's so wonderful that we are all slowing down so Mother Earth can breathe. And most importantly, like you said, everything starts with self-love and self-care. And if everybody can do that around the world, the planet will be a much better place to live in, because we'll be coming from a hot space, and there'll be peace on earth and love and harmony. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for the wonderful community that you've built here, and for you sticking to your journey so that you can help so many people. And we'll have to do another podcast down the track to talk about all your other wonderful projects that I know you've got coming up. And I just wish you a wonderful continuation. And yeah, thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Beverly. It's been an honor and a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Thank you for your humbleness too, Bev. Nice to see.